Well, I'll say a word about our program. I'll hand it to Assistant Director and Professor Zembro, and it's her students from her Women Across Cultures class who are presenting. So we're ready if you want to send it our way, I guess.
Okay, sure.
Well, thanks. Here we are at Northern Kentucky University, and we've had a week of fantastic weather, and thunderstorms are looming, so we'll have a colder weekend, which will probably head your way in 24 hours or so. It's been a really exciting year in the honors program here, and Monica and I got to know one another last summer at the director's camp in the summer in Iowa, and we just accomplished so much, and this is yet another thing that we're doing thanks to you all for allowing us to have our students present. So what we did was we chose the 3 best papers from Belle Zembro's course, Women Across Culture, and Belle is the assistant director and the teacher of the course, and I will now ask her to introduce the panel and talk a little bit about the course.
Okay. Hi, I'm Belle Zembro, and in our study of the research on women's lives, we learned that the differences between masculine and feminine roles have less to do with biology and more to do with the socialization of gender roles. So each student in this class focused her research paper on the socialization process in a particular culture and the impact of these learned attitudes on the behavior of the men and the treatment of women. So Meagan Howard will read her paper first. It's on sex tourism in Thailand. The entertainment business in Thailand thrives by providing for the demands of men who think of women as sexual objects.
Okay. Thousands of men from all over the world travel to Thailand every year to take in the local culture and experience new things. Some of these men are repeat visitors, while others go for their first time to see if the stories are true. But no matter where they are coming from, they all want the same thing: sex. Sex tourism is the main attraction in Thailand and has grown to be a $4 billion per year industry. The high demand for sex tourism is being caused by men globally, and this demand is strongly affecting the women suppliers in Thailand. The industry of sex tourism in Thailand has economic roots. In the 1960s, the main clients of entertainment, massage parlors, nightclubs, and bars in Thailand were U.S. military servicemen stationed in the country. In 1967, the U.S. military signed a treaty with the Thai government allowing U.S. soldiers stationed in Vietnam to come on rest and recreation leave, R&R, which enlarged the already existing demands by U.S. soldiers stationed in the country. From that point on, development and growth of the entertainment industry was enormous, and investments in hotels and bars skyrocketed. By the early 1980s, sex tourism had ceased to be an emerging industry and had become Thailand's principal source of foreign exchange. Throughout the early years, the customers of Thailand's sex industry expanded and civilian tourists replaced the resting personnel. Soon, clients were coming from all over the world, creating an international market. The sex industry of Thailand has continued to grow. The main cause of this huge expansion of business is the mass media. Many vivid accounts of the Thai sex industry exist in print, electronic, and video versions. The majority of these media focus on the upscale portion of the industry, namely go-go bars with seductively dancing girls and fantasy reenactments. Major publishers of tour books, such as Fodders, Frommer's, Rough Guide, and Lonely Planet, have entered the market in publicizing sex tourism, and include sections on nightlife that refer to the sex trade and offer various bits of advice. For instance, the 1988 and 1991 editions of Insight Guide to Thailand explained how to negotiate the transactions in a massage parlor and how to buy a dancer out for the night. These advertising methods make the sex market in Thailand look attractive, seductive, and entertaining. The internet has also helped enlarge the industry in the past couple of decades. Internet chat rooms and message boards allow men to swap stories, give tips, and encourage other men to take the sexual journey with freedom and anonymity. The abundance of mediums available to men on the sex industry is a clear indication of the enormity of the market. The Thai government has also played a large role in developing, condoning, and promoting the sex tourism industry of the country. When tourism and sex tourism was established, it quickly became an integral part of the developing Thai economy. In many countries such as Thailand, tourism has become a larger industry than many traditional exports. Tourism, and specifically sex tourism, is a major employer and source of foreign revenues. For these economic reasons, the government of Thailand advertises sex tourism as a reason to visit their country, and it is working well. The country has greatly benefited economically from the industry. The industry is comprised of an extensive array of venues available for these international tourists, ranging from massage parlors to tea rooms, to hotels, to blowjob bars and go-go bars. Each setting offers a variety of services and a variety of working girls. For example, the go-go bars are set up as staged acts where tourists can act out their fantasies. In some setups, women wear numbers for easy choosing and dance on stage for customers to watch and take their pick. In other venues, large groups of women sit behind a one-way mirror waiting for the client selections. These venues allow men to objectify the women working there, to see them as things to be purchased and used as they please. Here are the men who drive this demand. In Thailand, male tourists come from all over the world, but a large number of them are from the United States, Western Europe, Japan, Australia, the Gulf states, Malaysia, and Singapore. The Farangs, or local Thai men, have put in a large demand as well. The number of men purchasing sex is rising too, with 8.8% of men admitting to buying sex in 2000, which had risen from 5.6% in 1990. But what factors make these men think that it is desirable and necessary to fly halfway around the world to have sex with working Thai women? There are multiple documented reasons and motivations men have for buying commercial sex. They have the capacity to purchase sexual acts, access to a wide variety of women, the ability to contact women with certain characteristics, limited and temporary relationships, and enjoy the thrill of the activity. Other reasons men have for buying sex are physical unattractiveness, social unattractiveness, psychological maladjustment, psychopathology, manifestation of cultural gender role expectations, and buying sex as an exercise of power. Other push factors, or elements of men's lives that are lacking and cause them to look to commercial sex to fill the void, are emotional needs, changing stages of the life course, unsatisfactory sexual relationships, and unease with conventional dating etiquette. Despite these reasons, the objectification and degradation of women cannot be justified. Not only should we be concerned about the desire men have for commercial sex, but we must also look at their justifications and beliefs as to what they think makes this practice acceptable. Many men feel embarrassment and hide the fact that they purchase sex, but they still do it. Saunders, who conducted a study of men utilizing sexual services in Britain, found that many men, despite their embarrassment, seem to think that it is reasonable to pay a woman for sexual services because the women they use are consenting. But are the thousands of working women in Thailand really consenting? When force, fraud, or coercion is used to put or keep girls and women in their sex-providing jobs, sex trafficking is the issue. This is the case in Thailand, as many prostitutes are not yet 18, the age of consent, which constitutes trafficking. The majority of these girls are sold into the business by their families and are scared and unwilling to do this type of work. Regardless of this trafficking issue, men continue to rationalize their sex purchases. The enormity and existence of the sex industry in Thailand actually create many problems. In the area of interpersonal relationships, Dr. Stock claims that the sex industry removes sexuality from the interpersonal context into the arena of business and profit, creating and maintaining a market-driven commodity, packaging and selling our eroticism back to us in an almost unrecognizable, decontextualized form, a disembodied product. Though this is a bold statement, it carries some truth. Men are socialized to believe that the most desirable form of sex is non-relational or purchase sex. Through this type of sex, men learn that they can objectify women and treat them as a commodity. In this case, the value of relational sex and interpersonal relationships are lowered. In many cases, men begin to rely on strip shows, prostitution, and other sexual services for pleasure and become hooked on these products that are short-lived but promise satisfaction. The sex industry creates other problems as well. Specifically in Thailand, there has been major problems with child prostitution, the AIDS epidemic, and environmental destruction. These issues are unavoidable and are being maintained and increased by the Thai sex industry. Another issue created by this industry is the mental and physical health of the women working in the Thai sex business. These women are affected in many ways, short-term and long-term. In a large cross-cultural study of 475 sex workers, a portion being from Thailand, 67% of women displayed symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. Another study showed that women previously involved in prostitution have an 80% chance of suffering from depression. Other things that have been linked to prostitution are eating disorders, low self-esteem, and drug use. It is clear from these studies that prostitution and other sex-related jobs contribute to psychological distress. Many women also report feeling negative emotions during the process of selling their bodies to strangers. In a study conducted by Saunders, 67% of women said they felt guilt, disgust, and shame as a consequence of selling sex. These psychological and mental health issues are extremely important. It goes against basic human rights to allow women and force women into sex occupations that are degrading and mentally harmful, not to mention the possibility of being physically harmful with risks of diseases. The industry of sex tourism in Thailand originated with military entertainment and has continued to grow extensively over the last 4 decades. While the government of Thailand is promoting the tourism in exchange for huge economic gain, they must stop and evaluate the outcomes of this industry. Enforcing laws against sex services and sales would allow them to take a stand against the market and show that their attitudes are not that of condoning, but of human worth. Men must also evaluate their actions and demands and consider the value of human rights and respect for others. The constrained women who are supplying this Thai industry with sex are in risky careers that are likely to lead them to an unhappy future. Overall, the enormity and flashiness of the Thai sex industry sends the message that purchasing sex from working women is acceptable and desirable. This attitude must be changed for the sake of all women. As for the economy, a decrease in demand could set suppliers free.
Janae Bradley's paper is on sex tourism in Brazil. Factors that make Brazilian women vulnerable to sex tourism include dreams of a better life and the supply of men who want women to be sexual objects. Even with the devastating impact on their mental and physical health, women have few options for employment. They and their children are coerced into the high demand for sex work.
Brazil, with an economy which surpasses all others in South America, is a country of tropical climates and diverse cultures. According to a census taken in 2000, Brazil has a population of nearly 199 million, making it the 5th highest population in the world. Of these people, ethnic groups vary, including white, black, mulatto, and small numbers of ethnic groups such as Amerindian and Arab. Characterized by its agricultural, manufacturing, service, and mining industries, most of the population works in these sectors, according to a breakdown of populations provided by the CIA World Factbook. Along with industry, Brazil is characterized by its festivals, the biggest being Carnival, which takes place in February. Tourists come from all over the world in order to witness this festival with its extravagant parades and colors. Carnival, however, is not the only reason for why tourists flock to Brazil. Beneath the rich culture lies an industry of sex tourism. The roots of this industry are said to trace back to an increase of leisure and wealth of the middle class in post-industrial societies, leading to an increase in tourism. Brazil has the 2nd largest number of children involved in child prostitution. It is estimated that there are between 100,000 and 500,000 children alone involved in prostitution in Brazil, and many more women. A question remains, however, why Brazil? Many factors contribute to making Brazil a hotspot for sex tourism, one being poverty. Though Brazil has a gross domestic product 10th in the world, per capita they are ranked 105th. This translates to a Brazilian workforce earning a large sum of money overall, but due to its large population, not earning much individually. This is aided with the fact that there's a large economic gap between rich and poor. According to a BBC News article released in 2009, much of the arable land is controlled by a handful of wealthy families. The article also discusses that though Brazil is the economic giant of South America, it has a history of economic boom and bust, with development very much hampered by high rates of inflation, as well as foreign debt. This drives many of the poor, who are desperate to feed their families, to participate in sex tourism. Not only is poverty a factor contributing to the boom in sex tourism, but a crackdown in sex tourism in other countries has very much aided to Brazil's rise in ranks. In the early 1970s, countries of Asia were top on the sex tourism destination list. These countries, however, quickly became saturated, leading tourists to look for other outlets. Not only this, but other countries have been tightening up their laws and increasing awareness as it concerns sex tourism and prostitution, creating sanctions. In Cambodia, for example, police units have been established to combat sex tourism exclusively, arresting those and charging those caught. Japan, as well, has taken strides to cut down on sex tourism, especially acts that involve children. As law, officials in Japan prosecute those caught having sex with children, even those in other countries. Brazil's image is also a contributing factor to sex tourism. Often in travel brochures and logs, which tourists browse through when selecting a destination for their trip, Brazilians are very much displayed in a provocative manner. Typical images are of scantily clad women participating in festivals or strolling across the beach. It is seen as the land of samba and sensuality, and due to the vast number of poor in Brazil, people are more willing to comply with this image rather than combat it in order to keep tourists coming. Nearly 26% of the population live below the poverty line. The president of the World Tourism Forum even stated, "Look, sex is a part of our life. It can be a very healthy part of our life." Who are these people that lure tourists from around the world? Typically, they are women and children. The age of consent in Brazil is 18, though many of those participating in the prostitution are much younger. It is estimated that 2 million children under the age of 18 are associated with sex tourism. A journalist for BBC News writes that while on a family vacation in Brazil, he witnessed women, forlorn participants, frantically waving to seek attention, flagging down drivers for sex along a main road just a block from the beach at 1 a.m. Many of these participants, frantically waving to seek attention, were between the ages of 12 and 13. The young are not always doing this alone. Oftentimes, it is a family business. Mothers will accompany their daughters and serve as pimps, trying to persuade men to sleep with them. Very young girls will carry fake IDs to persuade men that they are of age, though at times age does not matter. With statistics showing that 1 in 5 cities in Brazil has a well-organized underage prostitution ring, there exists no shortage of sexual outlets and locations. Women and children do not always do this to make money for their families. Often, they will comply in order to find a better life. Paula, a teenager in Brazil who was often prostituted by her mother, told a journalist of her dreams she hopes to realize from this dirty work. Paula remarked that she desired to meet a European man that would take her away with him in order to give her a better life. 2 of her sisters were already in Brazil after finding such men for themselves. This is not a rare occasion. In a different article, a girl searching for men on the beach speaks of the same dream. Different from Paula, she had found such a gentleman, a musician from Europe, whom she had fallen in love with. After he went back home to Europe, however, they lost contact. She is determined to find another love, as a few of her friends have. As described, many European men serve as customers for the Brazilian sex tourism industry. The majority of these men are of German and Italian descent, though the presence of men of other ethnicities is ever increasing. Recently, there's been a major boom in the number of African Americans who visit Brazil for sex. On August 14, 2006, Ed Gordon, host of a talk show on NPR, spoke to William Jelani Cobb, a professor of history at Spelman College, who decided to take a voyage to Brazil. While there, he wrote an article which appeared in Essence magazine about why black men go there. In the talk, Cobb states that one of the major reasons why many black men go to visit Brazil is that the women provide them with attention that they do not receive back home. The attractive women will often flatter them, saying how much they love black men, and the men liking the attention given to sex willingly. Cobb states that the only reason these women are bothering with these men is to get money, witnessing firsthand the poverty that has inflicted Brazil. When asked by Gordon whether or not black men realized the true reason that the women wanted them, or whether they truly believed it was their charm that enticed these women, Cobb replied, "It is an issue of what you see and what you want to see. If you really want to open your eyes and see it, you can." In the article that Cobb wrote entitled "Blame It on Rio," he described the sex tourism scene by visiting and writing an uncensored journal. Through his article, readers are given a glimpse of sex tourism in its true form. On the first day, he speaks of getting approached by women who flatter him endlessly and say how they would love to be with him. These are extremely beautiful women. He continues to speak of how even businesses are privy to the sex business. He went to a restaurant and a waiter offered the gentleman Viagra. As he best described it in his talk with Ed Gordon on NPR, the Viagra there is as common as sand on the beach. Along with this, there are rules and proper etiquette as it pertains to sexual encounters. For instance, if a woman accompanies you at a table, she is then not supposed to look at or talk to any other men. Not only are there rules, there are economic classes of sex tourism. For the poorer travelers, girls can be found in the streets. For middle-income gentlemen, bars and discos are great locations. For the rich and those willing to spend large sums of money, however, bathhouses are prime locations. Cobb describes his venture to a bathhouse. There was a $150 entry charge upon walking in the door. Afterwards, each gentleman selects a woman to serve as his guide. She will then escort him to the dance floor, swimming pool, the massage room, or a private relaxation room. Though one guide comes with the price of admission, additional guides are capable of joining for an additional price. This alone demonstrates that the idea of these women being commodities that can be bought and sold rather than as humans with emotions and pride. Such bathhouses are publicly advertised, not something that is very much under the table. One could simply do a Google search for Brazilian bathhouses or bathhouses in Brazil and get a plethora of results. One website which publicizes a bathhouse similar in nature to the one which Cobb describes is funsunbrazil.com. The massage parlors and bathhouses, which are known as termas in Brazil, house a plethora of young women to serve as sexual guides to men at the right price. The site explains the charges and shows pictures of rooms as well as crouching half-naked women with thongs and see-through clothing. Even on the site, Viagra is promoted and said to be offered there. With such vast access to Viagra and numerous women willing to have sex with strangers, the approach taken by Cobb of blaming it on Rio could be easily accepted. Others, however, do not agree that it is the fault of Brazil for having such large numbers of tourists. Two such people are Jewel Woods and Karen Hunter, author of the book Don't Blame It on Rio, the real deal behind why men go to Brazil for sex. The focus of the book is that the reason why men go to Rio is not due to the tales they've read and heard from their friends. It is due to the fact that black men in particular can no longer find black women that fit their masculine dreams. Instead, they find women who want to be successful and focus on the career goals rather than bedroom goals. Men that go to Brazil in order to find women who are highly sexual, an attribute which they feel they cannot find in America. Brazil, however, does not wish to retain its title as sex tourist destination forever. In fact, many strides have been taken in order to curb sex tourism in the country. In an article which appeared in USA Today in April 2006 entitled "Brazil Starts Operation to Curb Sex Tourism," it appears that measures have been taken in order to cut down on the number of tourists who visit Brazil just for sex. Police have been busting into clubs known to have call girls and strippers. In a particular operation, police arrested 118 foreigners and detained them, hoping to send the message that easy access to sex tourism will no longer be accepted in their country. In addition to this, Brazil has launched a massive awareness campaign on sex tourism, both nationally and internationally. Governmental and faith-based groups alike have made it their goal to end or at least limit sex tourism in Brazil. Imposing laws alone will not bring an end to sex tourism. As Andre Calip states in his article, "Brazil Fights Child Sex Amid Carnival Tourism Boom," jobs will also need to be created in order to keep the young off the streets. Sex tourism is not merely recreational, but an economic issue. It boils down to families being able to survive. Rather than slashing the market, alternative jobs must be offered to make it so that young women and children will not need to participate in the sexual job market. What does sex tourism say about Brazilian women? It says that they are commodities with bodies that serve as means for income. They are tools, merely well-designed machines that draw the attention of men across the world willing to invest in them. The women are very much degraded, yet accept this degradation for economic gains, or do they? Can a child truly consent to having sex with strangers with the idea that the family needs food, or that are they being coerced to participate? These questions remain, but one thing is certain. Many groups will do all in their power to see Brazil get rid of its name on the sex tourism destination list.
Erin Wynn's paper is titled Women Seeking Superhero, Men Seeking Plato. She describes men and women involved in the mail-order bride business in the Dominican Republic. Women, looking for a better life, want a provider. Men want a woman they can dominate. This practice is especially detrimental to women.
Each year, hundreds of thousands of women advertise themselves to foreign men as prospects of marriage. In the past couple years, the online demand for these prospects has risen phenomenally. For women of the Dominican Republic, these services serve as a way to escape from poverty and unemployment. For the Western man, these women seemingly meet the demand for an ideal. But looking at the issue closer, one has to look at why these women are searching for these particular services, why these men seek for these women, and what are the implications of all these actions. The Dominican Republic is a beautiful island between the North Atlantic Ocean and the Caribbean Sea. With its tropical temperature and its mystic terrain, it seems like it could be a paradise. The country itself, however, has been plagued with war since the beginning of its existence. With everyone from Spain to France to the United States and even Haiti laying claim to the country at one point or another, the country has fought for its own identity since it was discovered. Today, the country is besieged with unemployment and poverty. According to the United States' CIA website, the country suffers from marked income inequality. The poorest half of the population receives less than 1/5 of the gross domestic product, while the richest 10% enjoy nearly 40% of the GDP. As of 2004, 42.2% of the population was below the poverty level. The custom of exchanging money for brides has seemingly existed with the first recording bride price going back to 3000 BCE. The two most commonly and historically known forms of payment were either a bride price, which was paid by the groom to the woman's parents, or a dowry, which went from the parents to the future groom. Today, the legality of mail-order brides differs from country to country. In the United States, for example, mail-order brides are perfectly legal as long as they go through immigration procedures. Online websites are overwhelmingly popular and simple and easy to use. A Google search of Dominican brides alone provides over 100,000 hits. According to Robert J. Scholes in his article, The Mail-Order Bride Industry and Its Impact on U.S. Immigration, there are two ways men can connect with their future brides. The first is an online service which provides pictures, biographies, and information to men who are charged $2 to $5 for each email or mailing address they wish to obtain. The second are online email pen pal groups, which are usually free of charge and connect men and women based on the type of relationship they wish to obtain. According to Scholes, approximately 100,000 and 150,000 women from a variety of countries advertise themselves annually as being available for marriage. The oldest of these sites, Cherry Blossoms, reported that they serve over 100,000 men a month who pay up to $200 each. In my own searches, I found it extremely simple to find profiles of young Dominican women. On sites like Dominican Senorita, women as young as 18 were clad in sexy outfits, bikinis, or even simply bras and underwear, posing for pictures of men regardless of age, whom they are willing to relocate for. The majority of the women spoke only Spanish, and their profiles, written in perfect English, sounded like broken records of women who are fun and looking for a stable guy to settle down with. Most of them enjoy cooking, talk about their small physique, and ask that men call, email, or visit them on a tour. I found in particular that the ages of the women did not always match the year they were born. The age of the man was always indicated as being not important. The girls were always willing to move, and when asked if the girls smoked, they always said no, and when asked if they cared if the man smoked, they always said they didn't mind. So why are so many young Dominican women willing to move thousands of miles away to marry foreign men? According to Scholes, the general consensus from the women is a search for a better life. Foreign women see, particularly American men, as being movie stars, who are more kind and faithful to their women, as opposed to native men who are cruel and cheat on their wives. Machismo beliefs among some Dominican men might also be a factor. According to Machismo and the Dominican Republic, traditional male perspective is that man is supposed to be a conquistador of women. Being both aggressive and charming, these men find it a game to see how many women he can seduce. Women themselves, however, are supposed to be childbearers and housewives who attend to the needs of their husband. Her voice within the family decisions is silenced in the presence of her husbands. Moreover, extramarital affairs are extremely common within the Dominican Republic, as the man feels it is their right, and in some cases their duty as men, to seek the companionship of other women. Another part of this issue is the men themselves who seek the available brides-to-be. Scholes found the majority of men seeking wives to be white, successful, politically and ideologically conservative, with a median age of 37. 50% of the men had been married at least once before. The number one reason given by these men for seeking foreign wives was the traditional values they were perceived to have. Scholes believes, although these men say they seek a life partner, those who have used the mail-order bride route to find a mate have control in mind more than a loving, enduring relationship. The ultimate question, however, is whether or not these women are going to genuinely authentic men who are searching for a lasting relationship, or if they are going to be exploited either emotionally, physically, or sexually. Unquestionably, on the woman's part, the desire for a husband may not outweigh the desire for a citizenship in a different country. However, the greater threat is undoubtedly to the women. With human trafficking being the second highest and fastest growing illegal activity in the world, this has to be taken into consideration. Are these women being given fraudulent promises or being unknowingly coerced into undesirable situations? In his report, Scholes states that authorities agree that abuse in these marriages can be expected based on the men's desire for a submissive wife and the woman's desire for a better life. At some point, the alien bride has had time to adjust to the new environment, to make friends, and become comfortable with the language. Her new independence and his dominations are bound to conflict. The circumstances in which the Dominican women reside put forth a desire to get out in any way possible. According to the International Organization for Migration, as of 1996, the Dominican Republic had the fourth highest number of women working overseas in the sex trade, at an estimated 50,000 women or more. The sex trade is seen as an alternate for young women to their poverty, who can expect about $80 a month working at home in one of the better jobs, that is, if they can find one. Another factor to these numbers is the amount of women who know friends, relatives, and other women who have gone overseas in search for a better life. The men themselves are overwhelmingly seeking these traditional values in the women they seek. Goodwife.com complains about Western women being feminazis, who after marriage let themselves go, try to fix up their men, be the boss in the marriage, and put her career ahead of her man. The intellectual conservatives gives advice to men not to marry because Western women are simply after the money through divorce. They said, the divorce industry makes it very attractive for your spouse to divorce you and take your children. The 1950s ideal woman who cooks, cleans, and always has her man on her mind seems to be the stem of the aspiration for the perfect foreign wife, as opposed to the woman whose aspirations seem to center around her own hopes and dreams. The Dominican women appear to be, for these men, women who they can mold into a perfect wife. In their act of saving them from their current situation, they hold the power to shape them into the wife they dream of. The Dominican women seeking, through mail-order services, an opportunity to make a better life for themselves outside of their impoverished country. Although their actions may be seen as deplorable by some, it is worth thinking about the situation that would make a young woman leave her home, her family, and her friends, and everything she knows behind, to marry a complete stranger in a foreign land. As for the men, although their services are providing a vehicle for women out of poverty, the inhibitions with which some men enter is really what is unacceptable. Under what circumstances is the Western world raising their men to seek for women which they can mold into an ideal? The Dominican women meet the supply for the Western man's demand. Along with so many other women from around the globe, the Dominican women seek the mail-order bride services to try and find an escape from the circumstances in which they live. However, the exploitation of these women with the stereotype of having a moldable quality to fit the desires of men who are unsatisfied with a more dynamic perspective in a Western woman is detestable. The women of the Dominican Republic are simply trying to find a way out, and the Western man is simply trying to find a perfect mate. In the end, everyone is seeking for an ideal instead of looking at the causes and effects of the current situation.
In conclusion, we have learned that gender role stereotypes have impacted women in psychologically devastating ways in various cultures around the world. The poor are especially vulnerable, and they have been treated as sexual objects or property with few rights and little protection. Besides human sex trafficking, there are still bride burnings, honor killings, and female genital mutilations. The treatment of women impacts men as well. According to Nicholas Kristof and Cheryl Houdin, countries that nurture terrorists are disproportionately those where women are marginalized. A way to change the world is to empower women by educating them. We have seen the impact of educated women on their community, from improving the economy to improving maternal and children's health care and to fighting for basic human rights. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Sure. Actually, I'll go first. Then. I had a question for Meagan. I noticed that Jena mentioned that Brazil was the government. There were some signs that they were trying to curb sex tourism, and that there were also some faith-based groups that were going into Brazil to curb the sex tourism. I was wondering if there was anything that you found in your research to indicate that that was happening in Thailand.
Well, when I was doing my research, I was mainly focusing on the men who went to Thailand to purchase the sex. I didn't find anything specifically that said that, like, the nation of Thailand was trying to stop this, but I didn't look specifically into that, so it is possible, but I didn't find anything like that.
Okay, could I ask a question, please? Hi, I'm MC Kalani. I'm a lecturer in the Communication Skills Department here at Robert Morris University. And I wanted to ask, in any of your research, any three of you, did you find, I know you were concentrating on women, but did you also find that boys were being exploited for sex tourism too?
I know specifically in mine, I was specifically looking at mail order brides, which is mostly dominated by, women, men seeking women, so.
I feel that in our course, in our class, we watched different documentaries which stated that they would find young boys in order to be at these karaoke bars and go-go bars, along with the young girls and the women as well. And in most of those situations, it would be that the parents were, I don't want to say they sold their children, but what happened was that they received some sort of monetary gain from another individual in the thought that they would then give their children to that individual. So in that respect, there were young boys as well that would be in this ring.
And I know specifically in my research on Thailand, I found that they also have, like, gay nightlife. They have gay bars, and though it didn't say anything specifically about young boys, I'm certain that that is very likely, just in noting the biggest problem of child prostitution.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question for the first speaker, Meagan. I'm Diane Todd-Bucci. I'm a professor in the English Studies Department. And I just wondered if you could contextualize that statistic in which you said that there's an increase in men who are willing to pay for sex. Is that U.S. men in general?
That, yes, that fact was men in Britain, actually. That was specifically for research conducted in Britain.
Okay, and along with that, was there any discussion by the authors about the accuracy of that stat and the fact that it might even be higher because of someone's willingness to disclose that information?
Right. That fact was that was for men willing to admit that they had purchased sex. So it wasn't the actual number of men who had purchased sex, because a lot of men will not admit that they do that. So that was just the willingness. So, yes.
Thank you.
This is like driving on the wrong side of the road.
Hi, how are you? You had done a nice little piece about African American men going to Brazil specifically. Was there a reason that you found in your research why Brazil was more attractive than some of the other countries that the other ladies discussed, like Thailand? What made Brazil so attractive rather than the other countries?
Well, that wasn't exactly, that specific question wasn't exactly covered in any of the articles that I read. The only thing that was discussed is that men want these, like, South American females and how they're portrayed, as I stated, in the tour guides and brochures. And then it's pretty much word of mouth from that point. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have a question for Erin, and I'm wondering, are the mail order brides in the Dominican Republic, are they coerced into this, do you think? Or what's their psychology?
I think it's more along the lines of they're in a really bad situation, so they're willing to get out however possible. So it's more along the lines of they hear of other women going to the United States or going to Germany or Great Britain. These countries are so lavish that they're willing to do whatever it takes to get out, and so they'll put themselves pretty much up for sale to get out, basically.
So do you think it's, I mean, you've all talked about economic factors and cultural factors. Maybe each of you could speak to that a little bit, which you think is more important. Is it the poverty and the distress associated with that, or also like the culture of the Dominican Republic or Brazil, that this is okay, this is encouraged?
Well, for my country specifically, I think it is definitely the poverty issue. These women are, like I said, they're just trying to get out, and they've heard these stories of women getting out, so why wouldn't they give it a try?
And then in my research of Brazil, I also think that it is, the major portion of it is economics. Just because, just for the simple fact that it appears that the economics gives way to the culture, and that the culture of, let's see how I'm trying to form this, that the economic reasons for people wanting to, you know, participate in sex tourism is only aided by their culture being seen as a highly sexual culture. So that just helps them out. And just the fact that there's such a great disparity between the rich and the poor, which is one of the major reasons, or one of the major contributing factors of how they will, you know, stay a global South country. So.
And specifically in Thailand, in the research that I did, I feel like the culture accepts the sex tourism. It's just become the norm. And I feel that the economics is the largest portion because Thailand is a very poor country. And in my research on child prostitution specifically, it was noted that a lot of families would sell their children to gain material things, basically. It might be worth selling a child to gain a TV because they were just so poor. These material things look so glamorous, and they have other children. And it's just become culturally acceptable to do that in Thailand.
I just want to add that this theme of coercion has been a theme throughout our course this entire semester. And, you know, we've talked about if you're that economically deprived where you don't see any other options, can you really freely consent to sex trade? And also, a lot of times when people get involved in this, they once they're in, they can't get out. There's debt bondage, or often the victims don't receive the money. They're coerced psychologically. You know, if you try to escape, we're going to hurt your family. So the choice might be like the dream of winning the lottery, and they'll take the chance because they're so economically desperate. But then once they're caught up in it, it's almost impossible to get out. So coercion, we've discussed that all semester about can these women freely consent or not.
I have a question for Erin.
Hi.
You all did such a nice job. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was curious what happens to the mail order brides once they get to the United States. Did your research cover that, Erin? For instance, what is the success rate of the marriages? What happens to the women if the marriage would fail, and so forth?
Actually, I looked into that a little bit, and the companies themselves, like the mail order service companies, don't track whether or not the women stay married or do not. So it's really hard to tell whether or not they're successful or not. Some of the women are just coming over just to get citizenship. So they might stay for 6 months to get a temporary visa, or 2 years in the marriage to actually gain citizenship. But as far as like the men go, like I said, the men themselves are looking for control. And once the women get comfortable in the country, once they learn the language, once they make friends and things like that, it's harder for the man to control the women. So a lot of times the marriages end because the man can no longer control the woman. There's also a higher rate of abuse and things like that in those situations.
Thank you.
I do have one more question.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it seems that the U.S. is a big contributor to this because it seems like we're big consumers of this industry. In any of your research, were you able to find that we are doing anything to curb some of this tourism, or are there any laws being passed in this country?
I did not find anything like that specifically in my research. If it's out there, it's just not something that I looked at.
Same with my research.
Same here.
But the U.S. is a destination for a lot of these trafficking victims, and it's the issue is one of states, kind of a states issue. Different states have different laws trying to combat trafficking, and one of the problems is that it's hard to recognize these cases. Sometimes people don't realize what trafficking is, and they might think of it the case as a prostitution case, and so it won't be prosecuted as a trafficking case. But some states, like Kentucky, for example, is one of the states that does have more stringent laws. But it's a matter of educating people about recognizing the signs of trafficking victims and recognizing the cases for what they are. And then, but there's just so many agencies involved, international agencies, the FBI, the INS. So there's a lot of communication that needs to be happening to make the cases tried as trafficking cases. So yeah, the United States needs to get more on the bandwagon with preventing people coming in as trafficking victims.
Well, thank you very much. I think we're out of time, but we really appreciate you presenting to us, and very nice job, very enjoyable. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. We really enjoyed it. And I was just wondering, how many schools are participating in this conference?
6.
6? Okay. Okay. Well, thank you.